What if I told you that Alabama ranks as the fifth poorest state in the nation and maintains a 39.2% adult obesity rate? Yet, specific community gardens in the state are thriving without expensive inputs. The secret isn't compost or raised beds. It's 3 organizational materials that cost nothing but deliver more value than any store-bought garden supply. Take the Hillside Community Garden, which accumulated over 4,000 volunteer hours across 5 years while maintaining consistent leadership transitions. The difference isn't what they buy, it's how they build their foundation using resources that are hiding in plain sight. Yet most gardens never discover these organizational assets before facing their first major crisis. Behind these success stories lies a pattern of failure that has nothing to do with pests or weather patterns. While gardeners obsess over soil amendments and irrigation systems, community gardens across America face a silent epidemic rooted in organizational weakness rather than environmental challenges. Research from the University of Florida's Institute of Food and Agricultural Sciences identifies the core problems. Lack of volunteers and low community support emerge as the most agreed-upon challenges to starting or sustaining community gardens throughout Florida. Gardens fail when they rely on expensive inputs to solve problems that stem from weak social architecture. The pattern repeats consistently across regions. A single dedicated founder burns out from managing everything alone. Volunteers drift away without clear roles, and costs spiral upward. The founder typically assumes responsibility for plot assignments, maintenance schedules, tool management, conflict resolution, and financial oversight. This concentration of duties creates a bottleneck that chokes garden operations. When the founder takes vacation, gets sick, or simply needs a break, garden activities grind to a halt. New volunteers receive minimal orientation and unclear expectations, leading to frustration and early departure. Meanwhile, costs accumulate without strategic oversight. Gardens purchase duplicate tools because no inventory system exists. Maintenance projects require contractor labor because no volunteer possesses the necessary skills. Plot rental fees remain artificially low to attract participants, creating budget shortfalls that force founders to subsidize operations from personal funds. The Hillside Community Garden initially faced skepticism from parks officials who doubted community demand and capacity. Tires, garbage, and invasive honeysuckle covered the hillside, creating significant restoration challenges. Municipal authorities questioned whether local residents possessed the commitment and expertise necessary for long-term stewardship of such damaged terrain. Yet over 5 years, this project accumulated over 4,000 volunteer hours and transformed the damaged hillside ecology. The transformation included soil stabilization through terraced planting, native species restoration, and water management systems that prevented erosion during heavy rainfall events. The garden now serves as a demonstration site for ecological restoration technique. The difference between this success and typical garden failures operates like the distinction between a well-designed manufacturing system and an artisan workshop. Manufacturing systems distribute specialized tasks across multiple operators and continue production regardless of individual worker availability. Artisan workshops depend entirely on the master craftsperson's presence and expertise. Successful gardens implement systematic approaches to building organizational resilience. They establish governance structures that distribute leadership responsibilities across multiple volunteers. Committee systems handle specific operational areas: maintenance, education, membership, and finance, with clear role definitions and accountability measures. Leadership rotation prevents burnout while ensuring knowledge transfer between participants. These gardens also develop formal onboarding processes that transform new volunteers from resource consumers into productive contributors within their first season. Orientation sessions cover garden policies, plot maintenance standards, tool usage, and conflict resolution procedures. Mentorship programs pair experienced gardeners with newcomers, creating support networks that increase retention rates. Financial sustainability emerges through diversified revenue streams rather than increased fees. Educational programming attracts grant funding, corporate sponsorships, and institutional partnerships. Produce sales to local restaurants or farmers markets generate supplemental income. Tool libraries reduce individual equipment costs while creating shared resources accessible to all members. The gardens that thrive long-term treat community engagement as their most valuable resource, not their biggest challenge. They recognize that social infrastructure requires the same systematic attention as soil preparation or irrigation design. These organizations invest time in developing clear communication channels, fair decision-making processes, and inclusive leadership opportunities. This organizational foundation becomes the platform for accessing resources that money cannot buy. Strong governance structures attract grant funding because foundations prefer supporting well-managed operations. Clear role definitions enable effective volunteer recruitment because people understand their expected contributions. Financial transparency builds trust with community stakeholders who become advocates for garden expansion and protection. The transformation from struggling project to thriving community asset occurs when gardens shift focus from managing individual plots to building organizational systems. These systems create the stability necessary for long-term planning, the credibility required for institutional partnerships, and the efficiency that makes volunteer participation rewarding rather than frustrating. Yet even the strongest organizational foundation requires external resources to sustain growth and programming. While most gardens drain budgets buying tools and materials, successful operations tap into institutional partnerships that deliver expertise and equipment at zero cost. These partnerships function like industrial supply chains, where specialized knowledge flows continuously from source institutions to end-user gardens. Extension services, master gardener programs, and agricultural universities maintain extensive resources that remain underutilized by community gardens. The Alabama Cooperative Extension System operates like a massive technical library, specifically designed for local growing conditions. Their database contains specialized information for pest control, beneficial and harmful insect, weed control, mulching, fertilizers, food safety, soil nutrients, and testing, plus complete planning guides. They also maintain a master gardener helpline connecting gardens directly with gardening experts. These resources are calibrated for regional climate patterns, soil types, and pest cycles that commercial gardening guides cannot address with equivalent precision. These partnerships provide specialized knowledge that would cost thousands in consulting fees, plus access to equipment libraries and educational programming. Extension agents possess a graduate-level training in horticulture, soil science, and integrated pest management. Their expertise covers areas like soil testing interpretation, disease diagnosis, irrigation system design, and crop rotation planning. Commercial consultants charge hourly rates for this same technical knowledge, but extension partnerships make it available through ongoing relationships rather than expensive one-time consultations. Master Gardener programs function as volunteer expertise networks, where certified participants contribute specialized labor to community projects. These volunteers complete intensive training programs covering plant pathology, entomology, soil science, and sustainable growing practices. They commit to providing community education and demonstration projects as part of their certification requirement. Master Gardener volunteers typically contribute substantial annual hours per participant, representing significant value in free expertise when calculated at professional consulting rates. Universities often seek community demonstration sites for research projects, providing gardens with cutting-edge techniques and graduate student labor. Agricultural research programs require field sites where students can implement experimental growing methods, test new cultivar performance, and document sustainable farming practices. Gardens become living laboratories where academic research translates into practical applications. Graduate students provide hands-on labor for garden construction, maintenance, and data collection while completing thesis requirements. The University of Alabama at Birmingham's Harvest for Health program demonstrates this partnership model by providing gardening supplies and monthly mentorship with master gardeners for cancer survivors. Research partnerships introduce advanced techniques like companion planting systems, integrated pest management protocols, and water-efficient irrigation methods. University equipment libraries often loan specialized tools like soil testing kits, pH meters, and moisture sensors that individual gardens could never afford to purchase. Extension partnerships also provide access to bulk purchasing programs where multiple gardens combine orders for seeds, soil amendments, and basic supplies. These programs leverage collective purchasing power to access wholesale pricing typically reserved for commercial operations. Extension offices coordinate delivery schedules and distribute materials to participating gardens, eliminating individual transportation costs and storage requirements. Educational programming becomes a crucial component of these partnerships, attracting continuous volunteer engagement while delivering measurable community benefits. The Live Well Alabama initiative through SNAP-Ed helped establish 38 school and community gardens that produced over 2,600 pounds of produce, enough to meet USDA daily recommendations for nearly 1,900 adults. Extension agents develop curriculum for garden-based nutrition education, food preservation workshops, and sustainable growing seminars. These programs attract participants who often become ongoing garden volunteers, creating recruitment pipelines that strengthen community engagement over time. The key operates through approaching these institutions as collaborative partners rather than requesting one-time donations. Successful gardens identify specific ways they can support institutional missions while accessing resources. They offer demonstration sites for extension programming, volunteer labor for university research projects, and community education venues for public health initiatives. This reciprocal approach creates mutual value rather than one-sided resource extraction. Partnership agreements formalize these relationships, establishing clear expectations and ongoing communication protocols. Written agreements specify resource commitments, volunteer requirements, and educational deliverables. They also outline liability coverage, site access permissions, and intellectual property considerations for research activities. Formal documentation protects both parties while ensuring partnership continuity despite personnel changes. These relationships create resource pipelines that strengthen over time rather than depleting garden budgets. Initial partnerships often expand as institutions recognize successful collaboration patterns. Extension agents refer gardens to additional programs and funding opportunities through USDA community food projects, grant programs, and Alabama-specific grant opportunities. University partnerships can evolve into multi-year research commitments with increasingly sophisticated resource support. The transformation from resource-dependent operation to partnership-supported system occurs when gardens shift from seeking handouts to offering collaboration opportunities. Institutional partners prefer working with well-organized gardens that can deliver measurable outcomes and maintain professional relationships. Gardens that document their activities, communicate regularly with partners, and fulfill partnership commitments become preferred demonstration sites for expanding programs. Yet, even the strongest partnership network requires systematic internal organization to maximize these external resources effectively. This systematic approach requires governance structures that distribute leadership responsibilities across multiple volunteers rather than concentrating control in single individuals. The old Cloverdale Community Garden in Montgomery, Alabama, demonstrates this principle through over a decade of sustained operations using minimal purchased inputs. Their success stems from recognizing that gardens are bigger than one person, as emphasized by agricultural extension specialists who study community garden sustainability. Old Cloverdale operates through a formal governance structure managed by co-managers Lois Cortell and Deborah Hall, working within the Old Cloverdale Association 501c3 framework. This organizational foundation handles legal and structural responsibilities, property insurance, security protocols, and agreed-upon policies and procedures. The committee structure divides garden management into discrete operational areas: membership coordination, maintenance scheduling, educational programming, financial oversight, and community outreach. The garden's development process demonstrates how systematic governance evolves through community engagement rather than individual leadership. Beginning in 2015, organizers conducted open forums for community feedback, shared draft site plans with neighborhood residents, and promoted volunteer cleanup days to build participation. They documented progress through social media platforms starting June 25, 2015, creating transparency that attracted ongoing volunteer commitment. This methodical approach established 19 raised beds and secured a formal deed by 2015, providing the legal foundation for long-term operations. Committee chairs serve overlapping schedules that create institutional memory while distributing workload across the volunteer base. The staggered rotation ensures that experienced leaders mentor incoming committee chairs, transferring operational knowledge before departing their roles. This overlapping structure prevents the knowledge gaps that typically occur when founding leaders burn out or relocate. leaving gardens without essential operational expertise. New volunteers receive structured orientation and mentorship, transforming from resource consumers into resource contributors within their first season. The orientation process covers garden policies, plot assignment procedures, tool usage protocols, and maintenance expectations. Experienced gardeners serve as mentors for newcomers, providing hands-on guidance for soil preparation, planting schedules, and pest management techniques. This mentorship system creates personal connections that increase volunteer retention while building gardening expertise across the community. The system includes formal bylaws and clear role definitions that prevent conflicts while maintaining operational flexibility. Written bylaws establish decision-making procedures, conflict resolution protocols, and financial management standards. Role definitions specify committee responsibilities, volunteer expectations, and leadership transition procedures. These formal structures prevent the personality-driven conflicts that often fragment volunteer organizations, while allowing operational flexibility for seasonal variations and special projects. Committee structures enable specialized skill development within the volunteer base. Maintenance committees develop expertise in tool management, infrastructure repair, and seasonal preparation tasks. Educational committees focus on curriculum development, workshop coordination, and community outreach strategies. Financial committees handle budget planning, grant applications, and vendor relationships. This specialization creates depth of knowledge within specific operational areas, while preventing any individual from becoming overwhelmed by comprehensive management responsibilities. Regular leadership transitions bring fresh perspectives and prevent stagnation in garden planning and community outreach. New committee chairs often introduce innovative approaches to persistent challenges, drawing from their professional backgrounds or personal interests. Leadership rotation prevents the tunnel vision that can develop when the same individuals control operations for extended periods. Fresh leadership also attracts new volunteers who prefer working with peers rather than under established hierarchies. The governance structure operates through regular communication protocols that maintain coordination between committee areas. Monthly committee meetings address operational issues, coordinate seasonal planning, and resolve interdepartmental conflicts. Quarterly general meetings engage the broader volunteer base in strategic planning, policy updates, and community feedback collection. Annual leadership transitions include comprehensive handover periods where outgoing chairs train their successors and transfer operational responsibilities. This distributed leadership model reduces volunteer burnout while maintaining higher yields and community satisfaction than single-leader gardens. Committee structures create multiple entry points for volunteer engagement, accommodating different skill sets and time commitments. The governance structure itself becomes the most valuable asset, enabling gardens to operate efficiently regardless of individual participation changes. Strong organizational systems attract new volunteers because people can see clear pathways for meaningful contribution. Yet these internal structures require external support systems to reach their full potential. Municipal partnerships provide the external support systems that transform organizational structures into resource-generating engines. Zoning regulations and municipal policies often appear as barriers to community gardens, but strategic policy engagement transforms these obstacles into resource opportunities. The transformation operates like converting industrial waste streams into valuable byproducts. What initially seems like regulatory friction becomes the foundation for accessing municipal infrastructure and long-term operational support. Gardens that struggle with permits and regulations miss the opportunity to access municipal water systems, waste management, and land security. These operations typically approach municipal governments as adversaries to overcome rather than partners to engage. They focus on meeting minimum compliance requirements instead of exploring collaborative opportunities that benefit both garden operations and municipal sustainability goals. The Healthy Life Community Garden in Griffin, Georgia, demonstrates how proactive municipal engagement creates lasting partnership. When residents faced garden relocation challenges, they appealed directly to the Board of Commissioners and successfully secured new site arrangements with coordinated support from UGA Extension, Spalding County, and Parks and Recreation departments. This collaborative approach transformed a potential crisis into an opportunity for expanded municipal partnership and enhanced resource access. City planning departments maintain detailed knowledge of zoning variances, land use regulations, and infrastructure development schedules. The City of Homewood provides a concrete example of policy innovation, establishing specific provisions for community gardens in city ordinances that include criteria for establishment, operational standards, and zoning requirements. These formal policy frameworks eliminate regulatory uncertainty while creating clear pathways for garden development and expansion. Municipal composting programs provide gardens with high-quality soil amendments at no cost while solving waste management challenges for cities. These programs divert organic waste from landfills while producing nutrient-rich compost for agricultural applications, documented in sustainability practices that convert organic waste to fertilizer. The symbiotic relationship benefits municipal waste reduction goals while supplying gardens with premium soil amendments that would otherwise require significant budget allocations. Rainwater harvesting systems become feasible when gardens work with utilities to navigate regulations and access installation support. Municipal utility departments possess expertise in water system design, permitting requirements, and maintenance protocols for rain barrels and drip irrigation systems that enable water conservation. Utility partnerships also enable gardens to access bulk purchasing programs for water storage equipment and irrigation components designed for municipal applications. Policy alignment enables gardens to participate in municipal sustainability initiatives, accessing funding streams unavailable to independent projects. The Food Well Alliance demonstrates this approach through successful collaboration with city governments to develop urban agriculture policies, securing a $75,000 grant in East Point, Georgia, through strategic municipal partnership development. Gardens that align their operations with municipal funding priorities become eligible for grant programs specifically designed for municipal partnerships. Municipal partnerships also provide access to specialized equipment and technical expertise, typically unavailable to independent garden operations. Municipal public works departments maintain equipment libraries, technical specialists, and maintenance crews that can support garden infrastructure projects. These resources include heavy machinery for site preparation, specialized tools for irrigation installation, and technical expertise for soil testing and site evaluation. Long-term land security emerges through municipal partnership development rather than private land arrangements. Municipal land use agreements provide stability that private arrangements cannot match, protecting gardens from development pressure and ownership changes. These agreements often include infrastructure maintenance commitments, utility access guarantees, and legal protection from nuisance complaints. However, gardens must navigate specific regulatory challenges, including local zoning laws affecting garden location, structures, signage, fencing regulations, activities, and produce sale and distribution requirements. Understanding these regulatory frameworks enables gardens to design operations that comply with municipal requirements while maximizing resource access opportunities. Policy engagement replaces thousands of dollars in equipment purchases and ongoing maintenance costs while providing legal protection and operational support. Municipal water connections eliminate expensive well drilling or water transportation costs. Waste management partnerships provide ongoing compost supplies without purchasing and transportation expenses. Technical assistance eliminates consulting fees for site planning, infrastructure design, and regulatory compliance. Municipal partnerships transform gardens from temporary projects into permanent community infrastructure. Yet, even the strongest policy foundations require programming strategies that demonstrate measurable community value to maintain institutional support over time. Educational programming creates the measurable community value that transforms gardens from temporary projects into permanent institutional assets. Gardens that focus solely on food production miss the opportunity to become educational hubs that attract continuous funding and volunteer engagement. This transformation operates like converting a manufacturing facility from single product output to multi-stream revenue generation, where educational programming creates value streams that sustain garden operations independently of harvest yields. Educational programming transforms gardens from resource consumers into community assets that institutions actively support. Schools seek outdoor classroom opportunities where students can engage with hands-on learning experiences covering botany, ecology, nutrition, and environmental science. The SNAP-Ed School Gardens program demonstrates this impact, reaching over 1,800 students while emphasizing the importance of identifying supportive school staff and obtaining administrative buy-in for sustainability. As educator Ginger Eatman observes, students are more likely to try something they have helped grow, and children gain practical life skills beyond traditional classroom learning, such as understanding how food is grown. These institutional needs create a demand marketplace where gardens provide valuable services rather than simply requesting donations or volunteer support. The demonstration vegetable garden at Huntsville Botanical Gardens exemplifies this approach, growing about 1,150 pounds of food annually for donation while hosting field trips and workshops to educate about sustainable farming practices. Educational programming generates revenue through workshop fees, curriculum licensing, and facility rental agreements documented by Carrie Smith, including plot rental fees, workshops for fees, and market days. Old Cloverdale's plant sales-funded development projects, demonstrating how educational activities create sustainable revenue streams. Educational workshops attract participants who become ongoing volunteers, creating a continuous recruitment pipeline that operates more effectively than traditional outreach methods. Workshop attendees already demonstrate interest in gardening activities and possess sufficient motivation to invest time in learning experiences. They enter garden communities with basic knowledge and realistic expectations about volunteer commitments. This pre-qualification process reduces volunteer turnover while attracting individuals likely to contribute specialized skills and sustained engagement. Grant funding flows more readily to educational projects than simple food production, opening access to foundation and government resources typically unavailable to agricultural operations. Educational foundations prioritize programming that demonstrates measurable learning outcomes and community impact. Environmental education grants support curriculum development for sustainability topics. Health education funding supports nutrition programming and wellness initiatives. These funding sources provide multi-year commitments rather than one-time donations. Documentation of educational outcomes provides compelling narratives for corporate sponsorships and community foundation support. Educational gardens generate measurable data, including participant numbers, skill development assessments, and community impact documentation. They produce success stories featuring individual learning achievements and community transformation narratives. This documentation creates marketing materials that attract corporate social responsibility investments and foundation grants focused on education and community development. Educational programming also creates opportunities for workforce development and specialized skill training. Cultivate's model in Nashville combines education with workforce development, helping participants gain job readiness skills while learning farming techniques. Unity Gardens provides free classes on gardening, cooking, and pollinator care, demonstrating how educational programming serves multiple community development objectives simultaneously. These comprehensive approaches attract diverse funding sources and institutional partnerships. Corporate partnerships develop more readily with educational organizations because companies can demonstrate clear community benefit through employee volunteer programs and educational sponsorships. Corporate foundations prefer funding educational initiatives that align with their sustainability goals and community engagement objectives. These partnerships often include employee volunteer programs where corporate staff contribute specialized expertise while fulfilling company community service requirements. The systematic transformation requires developing specialized volunteer roles focused on educational delivery rather than traditional garden maintenance. Educational coordinators manage curriculum development, instructor training, and program logistics. Marketing specialists promote educational offerings and manage participant registration. Program evaluators document learning outcomes and impact metrics required for grant reporting and funding renewals. Educational programming attracts specialized volunteers and funding opportunities that reduce material costs while increasing community engagement and long-term sustainability. The garden becomes a learning laboratory that sustains itself through the value it provides to educational and social service organizations. This transformation creates permanent community infrastructure supported by institutional partnership. Yet individual gardens operating in isolation cannot achieve the full potential of these educational resources. Collective action through established networks unlocks resource access that transforms individual garden limitations into shared abundance. The American Community Gardening Association connects roughly 18,000 community gardens across the United States and Canada, creating a distributed resource system where successful techniques, equipment recommendations, and operational strategies circulate between member organizations. Regional networks create more intensive collaboration opportunities within specific geographic areas where gardens share similar growing conditions, regulatory environments, and community demographics. Georgia's Food Well Alliance demonstrates this network effect through comprehensive support systems that have assisted more than 300 community gardens, urban farms, and orchards across the state. Their Community Garden Grant Program provides funding, compost deliveries, volunteer assistance, and technical support that individual gardens could never access independently. The organization coordinates bulk purchasing programs that reduce seed and material costs while providing access to commercial-grade supplies unavailable to individual projects. Network participation enables shared resource systems that eliminate duplicate equipment purchases across multiple garden sites. The Alabama Cooperative Extension System coordinates bulk purchasing programs where multiple gardens combine orders for seeds, soil amendments, and basic supplies. These collective orders achieve wholesale pricing typically reserved for commercial agricultural operations, while providing access to organic seed varieties, specialized soil testing services, and professional-grade irrigation components. Commercial suppliers prefer working with Garden Network because they represent consistent volume customers with predictable ordering patterns. These relationships often include extended payment terms, seasonal pricing protection, and priority access to limited availability specialty products. Network purchasing coordinators possess expertise in product quality assessment, supplier evaluation, and logistics coordination that individual garden managers typically lack. Experienced gardens mentor new projects through formal partnership programs, transferring successful techniques and preventing common startup failures. Established gardens provide guidance on site preparation, organizational development, volunteer recruitment, and financial planning. They also share operational documents, including bylaws, policy, maintenance schedules, and educational curricula that new gardens would otherwise develop from scratch. The knowledge transfer process includes on-site consultations, regular communication protocols, and access to proven operational systems. Mentoring gardens often provide startup supplies, volunteer labor for initial site development, and connections to local suppliers and institutional partners. These relationships prevent new gardens from repeating expensive mistakes while accelerating their development toward operational sustainability. Regional networks facilitate policy advocacy, creating favorable zoning and regulatory environments for all member gardens. The Food Well Alliance's Composting Working Table initiative demonstrates this collective approach by coordinating policy development across multiple municipalities. Their work with city governments to develop urban agriculture plans includes zoning, land use, and food access policies that benefit entire regional networks rather than individual gardens. Collective advocacy efforts possess political influence that individual gardens cannot achieve independently. Network organizations maintain professional relationships with municipal planning departments, state agricultural agencies, and federal funding programs. They coordinate testimony for zoning hearings, develop template agreements for municipal partnerships, and advocate for supportive legislation that addresses insurance requirements, liability protection, and regulatory compliance issues affecting all network members. Shared marketing and fundraising efforts reduce individual garden workload while expanding community awareness and support. Network marketing campaigns promote community gardening benefits to broader audiences than individual gardens could reach independently. Collaborative fundraising events attract corporate sponsors and foundation funders interested in supporting regional food system development rather than single garden projects. Network events create opportunities for volunteer recruitment and knowledge exchange that strengthen all participating gardens. Annual conferences provide forums for operational technique sharing, policy development, and professional development programming. Regional workshops address specific technical topics like soil management through pest control strategies, and educational programming development. These events attract volunteers with specialized expertise who often contribute to multiple network gardens. Network participation provides economies of scale and collaborative resources that replace individual equipment purchases while building regional food system resilience. The collective strength of networked gardens creates political influence and resource access that transforms individual projects into permanent community infrastructure. Yet, even the strongest networks require systematic documentation to demonstrate their collective impact and secure the ongoing institutional support that sustains these collaborative relationships. Systematic documentation transforms garden activities into compelling funding narratives that attract institutional investment and sustained community support. The transformation operates like converting raw agricultural data into refined market intelligence, where basic activity tracking becomes sophisticated impact measurement that demonstrates concrete community value. Funders require measurable outcomes and clear impact statements that most gardens fail to provide effectively. Foundation program officers evaluate hundreds of grant applications annually, seeking projects that demonstrate concrete results through quantifiable metrics and compelling evidence of community benefit. They prioritize organizations that can articulate specific goals, measure progress systematically, and report outcomes transparently. Gardens without documentation systems cannot compete effectively in this funding environment. Simple tracking systems for volunteer hours, produce distribution, and educational programming create powerful grant applications. The Hillside Community Garden documented 800 hours of work, made new friends, and hosted 10 community events in their first year, with 90 people subscribed to their newsletter. This systematic tracking provided concrete evidence of community engagement and operational success that supported subsequent funding applications and partnership development. Digital spreadsheets capture volunteer participation patterns, documenting seasonal fluctuations, skill development progression, and leadership emergence within garden communities. Produce tracking records, harvest quantities, distribution methods, and recipient demographics, creating data that demonstrates food security impact and economic value generation. The SNAP-Ed program documented 38 school and community gardens, providing fresh vegetables to 10,640 residents with over 2,600 pounds of produce, meeting USDA daily recommendations for 1,988 adults, demonstrating the power of systematic impact measurement. These tracking systems function like industrial quality control processes, where standardized measurement protocols ensure consistent data collection, regardless of volunteer turnover or seasonal variations. EAT South documented 650 people hours worked, hosted seed swaps with 900 seed packets exchanged, and produced around 1,500 pounds of produce while welcoming over 4,000 visitors, including international guests. Weekly reporting schedules capture real-time activities, while annual summaries aggregate data into comprehensive impact assessments. Volunteer hour documentation reveals the economic value of community contribution through professional service equivalency calculations. The Hillside Community Garden accumulated over 4,000 people, hours worked over 5 years, and hosted multiple community events, including potlucks, workshops, events, retreats, classes, and volunteering at the local food pantry. When calculated at professional service rates, volunteer contributions often exceed garden operating budgets by substantial margins, demonstrating significant return on investment for funding organizations. Photo documentation of before and after transformations provides visual evidence that resonates with both funders and community supporters. Old Cloverdale's systematic documentation of progress on Instagram, beginning June 25, 2015, helped create community buy-in and reinforce the garden's mission through visual storytelling. Time-lapse photography captures site transformation from vacant lots to productive growing spaces, creating compelling narratives about community development and environmental restoration. Visual documentation operates through systematic photography protocols that maintain consistent lighting, angles, and timing for comparative analysis. Digital archives organize images by chronological sequence, seasonal cycles, and specific project categories. Professional quality visual materials enable gardens to create marketing presentations, grant applications, and community outreach materials without expensive photography services. Participant testimonials and success stories create emotional connections that financial reports cannot achieve. Structured interview processes capture individual transformation narratives, family impact stories, and community development outcomes. These testimonials document skill development, health improvements, social connection building, and food security enhancement through garden participation. Regular reporting to stakeholders maintains engagement and identifies opportunities for expanded support. Old Cloverdale uses multiple social media accounts to communicate events and activities, maintaining consistent community engagement through systematic outreach protocols. Monthly newsletters communicate garden activities, seasonal planning updates, and volunteer recognition to community members, municipal partners, and funding organizations. Documentation also reveals operational patterns that improve efficiency and volunteer satisfaction over time. Data analysis identifies peak volunteer participation periods, optimal educational programming schedules, and resource allocation patterns. Gardens use this information to optimize work schedules, coordinate maintenance activities, and plan seasonal programming that maximizes community engagement. Systematic documentation replaces expensive marketing materials and professional grant writing services, while creating compelling cases for continued and expanded funding. The data collection process itself engages volunteers and participants by demonstrating the tangible impact of their contributions. Regular feedback sessions share documentation results with garden communities, reinforcing the value of individual participation while building collective pride in community accomplishments. These measurement systems create the foundation for demonstrating organizational effectiveness and securing the resources that sustain long-term operations. The evidence confirms this organizational approach through documented results across multiple garden systems. The most successful community gardens invest in organizational infrastructure rather than expensive equipment, creating sustainable resource flows that strengthen over time. These operations function like precision manufacturing systems, where specialized processes generate continuous value rather than consuming finite resources. Alabama research validates these findings by identifying the same three core challenge areas that organizational development addresses: people through volunteer shortage and burnout solutions, funding through sustainable resource access, and technical knowledge through expertise and education partnerships. These three organizational materials, partnerships, governance systems, and educational programming, cost nothing up front, but deliver exponential returns through reduced expenses and increased community support. What organizational priority will you tackle first? Surveying community needs and interests, establishing committee structures, or developing educational programming partnerships?